like I said, I don't think anyone else was treated like me in this sense. I haven't heard of anyone else having this kind of stuff happen to him within the sheriff's office.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Maria. I am not a lawyer, but in today's video, I'll be interviewing Ian Murray. Ian Murray is a U.S. military veteran who served our country in Afghanistan in 2017, and as of September 2023, is currently on deployment out of the country. Currently, he is stationed in South Africa, and we would like to share the story because, as you guys know, we share a lot of false accusation cases, and in this case, it's a false accusation on a veteran. As a quick background story, in late 2022, along with his attorney, reached a settlement with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, which we'll be referring in this interview as JSO, who had falsely arrested him. Ian's name has been cleared legally, and it has been shown that there was no false doing on his end. However, as his website shows and shares, of course, after false accusations, there are long-term repercussions that affects people's personal lives, professional life. A good starting point to learn more about his story is on his website, which will be linked down in the description box below. All right, Ian, so I'm opening up the floor for you. Tell the people who you are.
My name's Ian Murray. I used to work for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office as a corrections officer. I've also been in the military reserve and guard components for, as of now, 21 years. In 2014, I was falsely arrested by my own department after one of my lieutenants filed a false complaint against me, alleging I was misusing my military leave. The detectives did not even do any kind of investigating. They found out I was about to go out of town for several months on military orders and went to a judge with false information, got an arrest warrant signed, and showed up at my house 2 days before I was supposed to leave and arrested me for grand theft and official misconduct. They ran a false narrative to the media. I was publicly humiliated. They spent months trying to cover it up. Even following up with another investigation after that. It was a very ugly process. I ended up not even being charged with a crime. We ended up settling a lawsuit out of court on it at the, I believe it was the end of 2021.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to digest. Believe it or not, we hear these stories all the time and we share them on here all the time. Very popular for showing body-worn camera footage and false accusations, and this happens a lot more than what you think. So I'm really happy that you are on here and you get to share your story with us and everyone out there. Definitely to clear your name. And with that being said, I do have here a couple of questions, so let's begin. So can you describe what the work environment was like and how did it change over time at the JSO?
Well, it was a corrections environment. It was not, it's not meant to be the most pleasant environment in a jail or a prison. It's the second department I worked for. The actual work environment itself was what I expected, to be quite frank. The big thing was the people I worked with. My leadership was very, as I said, a lot of them just didn't seem to have an understanding of what it was like to be in the military on a part-time basis. And there was always friction and tension with them on that. And it just got progressively worse up to this incident.
Right. And how about your colleagues and other supervisors, besides then the ones, of course, that you dealt with? How did they perceive you?
Overall, I got along pretty well with my immediate colleagues. It's like the military. There's varying personalities, people of different backgrounds, people of different education levels, people with different beliefs. And I always made an effort just to get along with everyone, maintain professionalism, and tried to do my job. Overall, I never had any real big problems with my immediate colleagues.
But how did Sergeant Shortworth's behavior towards you compared to his behavior towards other officers with similar National Guard obligations?
Well, there was only, you said Sergeant Schwartzel?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I remember him. There was one other officer who I worked with who also was in the reserve, and yes, he did treat us differently. For some reason, he never gave the other officer any problems about his military leave. With me, though, he was constantly trying to make it more difficult. And this other officer and I had the same hire date, so there was no seniority issues, nothing. We came in the exact same day and had very similar requirements of us from the military, but for some reason, Sergeant Schwartzel just made it an issue for me to, when, he wanted extra documentation, and I was on a training status. So he was, telling my field training officers to give me negative marks in my training report based on the fact I couldn't give him the documentation he wanted because it didn't exist.
Interesting. And I'm glad that you mentioned that there was no seniority between you and your other colleague as well. There was still clearly a difference of treatment. So did you receive any formal explanation for the poor marks in your training evaluations that seemed to coincide with your National Guard service?
Well, it wasn't directly, he didn't state it was because of my military service, but what he did was when I couldn't give him the documentation, he would have him give me a negative mark and something like follows orders accordingly or something like that, something that pertained to me just not being able to do what he told me to do or what he wanted me to do.
Right.
So yeah, it got progressively worse until finally one of my field training officers actually finally said, this isn't right. Let's go talk to the watch commander and get this resolved, which we did.
And what reasons were you given for the transfer back to Sergeant Richards' squad, despite your request not to be placed under his supervision?
I was never given an explanation. In fact, when I moved back to Sergeant Richards' squad, I immediately put in a transfer request to get off his squad.
Rightfully so.
In fact, I found out he actually requested me to be removed from his squad as well. But the lieutenant, her name's Rodriguez, it was Brokema, she's the one who started this whole thing, just refused to move me. She moved numerous other officers ahead of me, never gave an explanation until I went to the chief. And she tried using an excuse that, I misread the memo or something like that, which it was clearly, written. I even showed it to the chief, and she told me I would be moved. I was never moved, though. Stayed on his squad until this whole incident happened.
Do you feel that other officers in similar situations were treated differently from you?
Like I said, I don't think anyone else was treated like me in this sense. This whole situation, I haven't heard of anyone else having this kind of stuff happen to him within the sheriff's office, where they were. I mean, there's always some level. I mean, with Sergeant Richer and Lieutenant Rodriguez, there was always some level of favoritism. They had their favorite group of officers, but they never, not to this extent. Lieutenant Rodriguez had put several of my other colleagues under. She'd filed felonious complaints against them on an administrative level, just to kind of make them uncomfortable, but nothing to this extent. Even the union, when I talked to them when this whole thing started, they said, yeah, this is a new one even for us. We've never seen anyone have this happen to them. So.
And how were your military days tracked and verified by JSO?
Well, every year, my military unit gives us a calendar or a schedule, if you will, of our scheduled military leave. I would submit that to my supervisors, and then I would have to go into the leave system. It was on the computer system, and put in for those days off. And the lieutenants, as long as the documentation was there, they would approve them. I never got approved military leave until I could approve documentation. There were instances where I got called up for extra training duty or something like that. And I could not get the military leave approved without submitting documentation. So every day I took of military leave, I had orders or some sort of documentation to back it up.
And did you have a direct point of contact in HR who managed your military leave documentation?
No, I always just went through my my watch commander, my lieutenant, whatever facility I was working at.
And were proper protocols followed by JSO in each instance you were accused of misconduct?
No, they were not.
I know that these allegations have affected you tremendously, but I would like for you to share how the allegations and subsequent investigations have affected your personal and professional life.
Well, like I said, when they made the false arrest, they came to my house. I don't even live in Jacksonville. They came to my house, which is in a neighboring county, in broad daylight, arrested me, escorted me down my driveway in handcuffs, and put me in a car. And then they, like I said, they went to the news with a false narrative saying I had committed these crimes when they hadn't even done an investigation.
Ridiculous.
So I was publicly humiliated. In fact, that's how a lot of people I know found out about this whole thing, because it was all over the 6 o'clock news during drive time. They were on their way home from work. One told me and heard it on the radio.
Wow.
And they called me. It's like, dude, is this true? I'm like, yeah, I'm afraid so. But I didn't, like, they're like, man, they were, everyone knew me that knew I'd been set up, because they'd been following this since the whole initial complaint had started. I don't think even the lieutenant who started this, I don't even think she expected it to go this far. I think she thought it would just be a complaint. They'd put a little black mark in my record or something like that, and we'd all move on. I don't think anyone who initiated this expected it to blow up like it did.
Yeah.
Nor do I think they expected me to fight it so hard. But yeah, my security clearance was flagged to the military, so I couldn't go on my training assignment that I was originally scheduled to go on. Fortunately, that got resolved pretty quick. The military backed me up 100%. They knew I was in the right. They knew they had all the documentation. JSO came to my military unit and threatened members of my full-time staff, threatened to subpoena them, to take them to jail for obstruction if they didn't cooperate. It was a real mess. Fortunately, after about 2 months, when the prosecutor or the state attorney called my attorney and said they weren't even going to move forward with putting charges on me, that lightened things up a little. But I mean, it just, this went on for a total of 1.5 years, at least. I think might have been longer than that. But it definitely put a stigma on me big time, because people were questioning. I still get questioned about it sometimes when I'm going for new jobs. My security clearance is under continuous evaluation, so I do occasionally get asked about it by employers. I work in the private sector now, where I utilize my security clearance, and I have people ask me about it all the time. They're like, hey, what's this thing with you and JSO back in 2014? And I have to explain it still.
And that's super unfortunate too, especially being once again a false accusation and you were innocent. I'm sure that gets exhausting having to go over that over and over and over again, even for an interview. Now, how familiar were you with the legal protections afforded to you under the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act?
Oh, I was very familiar. In fact, like I said, this was not the first time something like this had happened. I had another lieutenant try to extend my probation time because I was on taking military leave, and I told him, you can't do that. That's against the law. And he was going to try and move forward anyway. I got my I went to my union again. This was before the incident we've been talking about, but this was back in like 2010, I think. And I told him, I'm like, you can't do this. I even cited the service, the Relief Act you just spoke of. And when the union got involved, they immediately, of course, halted it and decided not to move forward. But that's something we're briefed on regularly as reservists and guard members, is our rights under the law that protect us from this kind of stuff happening.
Did you receive any legal advice or representation during the disputes with JSO prior to your arrest?
Oh, yes. Prior to the arrest, I spoke with one of the attorneys in our union, and they'd informed me I had done nothing wrong. They said, if you have orders to back up all your days, you're fine. I was never worried until this whole thing happened. I figured this was just a cheap shot from my lieutenant. She was just trying to make my life miserable. I had faith these investigators would do their job and find no wrongdoing, but they obviously didn't.
How do you feel that this series of events have impacted your law enforcement and military services?
Well, as I said, I couldn't go to my training that I was originally scheduled to. That got put back 1 year. So everything pretty much got put back. Any promotions I was supposed to get, everything got pushed back, delayed by at least 1 year because of this whole thing. And then, like I said, even after it was all resolved, I had some supervisors in my military command that were still questioning the whole thing. They were like trying to dissect it further on their own time, just for their, for whatever reason. And it was like I said, it was a mess. But like I said, I was very lucky to have the military back me up on this. It was a real lifesaver to know that they were standing behind me and weren't going to let the sheriff's office railroad me.
I know you've mentioned already how it's affected you afterwards, but I would like for you to go into more detail for the viewers to understand how false accusations affect people in their personal life for years to come as it is affecting you now.
Well, I mean, this whole thing from start to finish took 8 years. You figure by the time it was resolved, that was 20% of my life that I had to spend dealing with this whole thing. It was very stressful. I was married at the time. It put a lot of strains on my marriage as I couldn't work for a while. We suffered financially. And to this day, like, people still ask me about it. Like I said, it's just one of those things. As long as I'm in the profession I'm in, I'm going to have to explain this probably at some point, during my career, wherever I'm working. It's going to linger over my head for the rest of my life because of the false news coverage. All you have to do is Google my name and all those news headings come up. And the real sad part is, even with all the facts, we've reached out to the media that ran the false narratives, and they won't even respond to us. They won't do any kind of retraction or do any kind of follow-up with the truth of the matter. I hate using that term fake news, but that's what all that news was. It was fake news, and the media outlets will not report the truth now.
Now, what are your professional and personal goals after you resign from JSO?
Well, after I finished my training, I have been able to explore that career. I'm in military intelligence now, and I've been able to pursue that. I've finished my first college degree last summer. I'm working on my second one right now.
Great.
My goal is to just keep moving forward in that field. And if I get tired of that, maybe move into something in the private corporate sector in a management position. That's what I'm majoring in for my second degree, is general management.
Nice.
And just see where life takes me. But I'm just trying to do the best I can with what I have to work with now. And I still have my mind, my intelligence, and my desires and my goals, and I'm just using those as best as I can.
Love the answer. And how has this experience influenced your law enforcement and military service perspective?
Well, the military service, it's actually made me feel better about my military service when the military backed me up. Like I said, they actually stood toe to toe with me, and they didn't back down from JSO. Even when JSO came and threatened them, they're like, yeah, we're not going to, you want to go head to head with this, we're going to take on you guys on this full steam. Law enforcement in general, I've always had a lot of respect for law enforcement. It's a dangerous job. I've done it in the police, and in the military. I was military police for a while, and like I said, I've worked corrections. It's a dangerous job. It's a job not many people are willing to do. Overall, as a profession, I have respect for it, but this just proves that every bushel of apples has the few rotten ones in there. So obviously, at JSO, there is a very high level, especially in the administrative section, of what I would call dirty cops. And it's a shame because they give that law enforcement image a bad name, in my opinion. They make it harder for the ones who are out there actually trying to protect the community and serve the public. And it's just a shame that people like that, they get to keep their jobs. There's no, from what I understand, there hasn't been any kind of repercussions on these detectives. They cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars, between man hours, legal fees, fighting this case. It even went up to the undersheriff. He was involved in trying to coerce me and threaten me. And it just, it's a shame. But law enforcement in general, I still have a lot of respect for.
And I really like your answer. You clearly show that you're a really good guy. A lot of people could have easily bashed law enforcement, especially after your experience. Big bowl of good apples, there's always going to be the rotten ones, and that's good that you can also acknowledge that. Have you pursued any legal actions against JSO for their actions? And if so, what was the outcome?
Well, we did, like I said, we did file a lawsuit against them, and we did win that. Well, we settled out of court, I should say. For me, I consider that a win. As far as other avenues, though, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get anyone to really, it just doesn't seem like anyone's really interested in pursuing it anymore. because so much time has gone by and no one really wants to rock the boat, I guess you could say. So, I mean, but from what I understand, though, my attorney told me after this whole thing, they've made massive policy revisions within their own department on how they can conduct investigations. They're not allowed to just go on a whim anymore. They actually have to have all their facts backed up before they can try to do this to somebody else. So, I mean, it was a horrible experience for me, but maybe for the next person, it'll be won't be as bad.
Win is a win. It looks like you made a difference. How did the Fraternal Order of Police support you during this time?
They didn't. Before the arrest, they gave me all the advice that I could ask for. They seemed to be on my side, but when the whole thing happened, the same lawyer that told me I did nothing wrong basically told me he'd represent me, but I would have to take a plea deal. Like I'd have to plead guilty to something. And he had no interest in helping me fight the case. He was just, it seemed they were just interested in helping the sheriff's office make this go away as quickly as possible when they'd realized they'd made a mistake. Even the union president who I'd spoke to, when the whole complaint process started, again, this is another individual told me I did nothing wrong. You know, you did everything right. He even was trying on the administrative side when they did the second investigation was trying to convince me to take a deal. And he even admitted it was because of politics. Like there was a sheriff's election coming up and they wanted to get it resolved so the new sheriff didn't have to deal with it. And I told him, I point blank, I said, this is why I did not involve you guys beyond when I was arrested, because it's just blatantly clear. Whenever there's this is another trend, unfortunately, when there's an incident like this that involves the police department and the corrections department, the FOP always sides with the police side of the house. When it's internal affairs versus a corrections officer, they were always going to just try to get the corrections officer to take some kind of deal to make the whole thing go away. The internal affairs police officer gets a little bronze star for closing another case, and then the corrections officer gets a black mark put on their record that they don't necessarily deserve. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but it was the exact same thing with me. They did not want to help me at all.
Looking back, would you have done anything differently during your time at JSO?
If I could do it over again, I probably would have left JSO and gone to work for the county I live in. We have a sheriff's department in the neighboring county I live in. I probably would have at some point just gone. They were always hiring. I probably on to work for them. But JSO had a really good retirement system at the time. I mean, I moved from 2 states to come work for JSO. I was living in South Carolina and I moved back to Florida because of the benefits they had. Everyone told me what a great sheriff's department it was to work for. You know, I could have worked 20, if I'd still been with them now, I'd be able to retire in about 5 years and get another full pension. That was my goal, was to make a long-term career out of it. That's part of the reason I just kind of never really was, you know, I never thought about quitting at that point, just because I'm like, you know, this is all just BS. It's hot air. I'll just get moving on with my career and retire. But yeah, in retrospect, if I'd known this was going to happen, I would have definitely probably either left the sheriff's department, or I would have just, at the very least, maybe gone to work at another facility where I wasn't around that poor leadership I had.
Not just the environment, but what came after that. Like you said, you kind of stuck around because you probably just figured, oh, this is something super petty, this is temporary. And as you mentioned, you don't even think that they did as well. Now, what advice would you give to other officers who might find themselves in a similar situation?
Document everything. If you feel like you're getting dragged into a situation, take notes, get everything in writing. And if it becomes like a matter where you're under criminal investigation, hire a real lawyer immediately. Do not trust the union lawyers. Find an actual attorney who's going to have your best interests at heart, not the sheriff's office.
We say this all the time. As soon as you feel that you're clearly under investigation, not only document everything, but hire a real lawyer that has your best benefit, because they're the ones that are going to guide you through everything. Now, to bring some legal rights awareness, in retrospect, what kind of legal information or support would benefit you as a reservist employed by a non-military entity?
Well, like I said, any if you have a military, most military units have what's called a USERA rep, or someone that can advise them on these kind of, and I did speak with that individual too when this whole thing started, and even they said, your orders are sufficient, nothing should happen to you. But unfortunately, that's not going to stop them from still carrying out action if they really just want to do something to you. But as far as like legal representation, just make sure you communicate with your military unit or command as to what's going on. And a lot of times they can refer you to the right type of legal representation you might need. But ask the I tell people this all the time: ask the experts.
Now, do you think your experience resonates with other veterans in civilian workplaces, and how can a law firm better address these shared challenges?
Well, yeah, it's definitely set some precedents, because most of the military people, even in my command, had never thing like this before. So it definitely resonates. And I don't know I've changed units from the one I was in, but I don't know what my unit back home in Florida is doing as far as training or anything. But like I said, everyone is made aware of their rights as a service member. So, but this case definitely, I'm sure, is sticking with a lot of people. And are they're going to remember it for a long time.
And last but not least, what qualities do you think veterans look for in a lawyer or a law firm when seeking representation?
Just probably reputation. Do they have a good track record of representing veterans? Experience. How long have the lawyers in the law firm been around? And a big thing is too, word of mouth. Have other people dealt with this law firm? Are they reputable? Are they going to do a good job? Have they done a good job for other people?
Okay, thank you so much, Ian. That covers all my questions. Now, is there anything else you would like to share for everyone watching this video?
I think I've covered pretty much everything, but just to like I said, the big thing is just document. If you ever feel like if you're in the reserve, or especially in a public service position like this, document everything, keep records of everything. And again, like if a supervisor asks you to do something you feel is a little out of the ordinary, get it in writing, make them send you an email or put it on a memo or something like that. I hate to say it, but it's hard to trust people sometimes. I trusted my leadership. I trusted this, my own department, and my trust was sorely misplaced.
All right, well, thank you so much, Ian, for sharing your story. It was a pleasure having you here. If you are watching this video and if you have a similar situation to Ian, we're going to be sharing his website down below. The website was put together to serve as a resource for telling Ian's story as well, provide further details, further insight, of course, to clear his name as there was no wrongdoing on his end. On his website, you can also find some further FAQs and contact information. And if you or someone you know is dealing with a criminal charge, please reach out to us. Our contact information is in the description box below. Or you can contact us at 754-206-6200.